The world wakes in a constant hum, a low-frequency vibration that seems to seep into every corner of human existence. The alarm blares, a digital scream, breaking the fragile quiet of dawn. Eyes open, already searching for the next demand, the next task, the next expectation. Our hearts race not because of lions crouched in tall grass, not because of storms rolling in over unbroken plains, but because a screen has flashed, a message has arrived, a deadline looms. Somewhere deep inside, an ancient switch has been flicked, and it will not turn off. The body believes, for reasons it cannot question, that danger is imminent. Every pulse, every surge of adrenaline, every shallow breath is a whisper from our evolutionary past, a message written in the language of survival: run, fight, survive. Yet the threat is invisible, intangible, and relentless. Our minds are crowded with fragments, emails, notifications, obligations, the endless scroll of faces and news and opinions. The modern human walks through a storm that is largely invisible, a maelstrom that cannot be outrun or fought with the strength of limbs alone. And yet, the body reacts as if it can. Muscles tense. Blood pumps. Hormones flood the system. Ancient circuits fire in a desperate mimicry of what once ensured life in the open savanna. For tens of thousands of years, human survival depended on a moment's notice, on the flicker of movement in the grass, on the roar of a predator, on the sudden collapse of the familiar. That response kept our ancestors alive, it shaped their bones, their brains, their very blood. Today, it keeps us alive in a world that no longer requires such vigilance, but it does not know the difference. Imagine standing on a cliff at dawn, the air crisp and clean, the land stretching endlessly in soft golden light. Your senses are alive, tuned to every rustle, every shadow, every scent. That was our world. That was the stage upon which our ancient survival mechanisms were forged. Each heartbeat, each drop of sweat, each instinctive glance over the shoulder had a purpose, and it worked. Threats were immediate, tangible, and unforgiving. There was no room for error. And yet, there was balance, too. The moment the danger passed, the body exhaled in relief. Tension dissolved. Muscles relaxed. The mind returned to curiosity, to wonder, to observation. Fear was necessary, but it was temporary, bounded, alive with meaning. Contrast that with the modern human landscape, where fear has no edges. There is no sharp predator to flee, no sudden natural disaster to elude. Yet the switch stays on. Traffic lights, financial worries, the judgment of colleagues, the endless comparison with curated lives on screens, these are the new predators, faceless and omnipresent. They trigger the same ancient circuits. The body does not distinguish between a tiger crouching in tall grass and a client's angry email or the red notification dot on a phone. Both demand attention. Both flood the system with cortisol and adrenaline, the chemical echoes of a survival strategy that evolved when the stakes were immediate, physical, and absolute. And so we live in tension, in constant preparation for threats that rarely, if ever, appear in the form our biology expects. Every heartbeat is a reminder, every shallow breath a whisper of our ancestral past. Our blood remembers what our minds may try to forget. Our nervous system, trained over millennia to respond with precision and intensity, now works overtime for a world that does not ask for its gifts in the ways it was designed to deliver them. It is exhausting. It is invisible. It is relentless. And yet, few stop to notice, because the world itself moves at the pace of a machine, pushing forward, demanding more, louder, faster, higher. In this landscape, quiet moments have become rare treasures. A walk through a park, the smell of rain on dry earth, the distant sound of birdsong, these are fragments of an ancient life still capable of soothing the modern storm. The body recognizes them even if the mind does not fully appreciate them. Somewhere, deep inside, a memory of balance lingers, a whisper of what it felt like when the switch could be turned off without conscious effort. It is a memory encoded in muscles, in veins, in cells, stretching back beyond cities, beyond agriculture, beyond language itself. But even when we try to pause, to breathe, to return to calm, the world intrudes. Notifications demand, meetings pull, tasks press. Our ancient circuitry, so exquisitely tuned for bursts of survival, cannot ignore these subtle but persistent threats. It is as if the body is forever poised at the edge of a cliff, muscles coiled, eyes scanning, heart ready to race. Relief is fleeting. Recovery is brief. The system was designed for moments, not the endless siege of modern existence. And yet, we move forward. We adapt. We survive. But the cost is invisible, accumulating silently in hearts, minds, and cells. There is a quiet tragedy in this, a paradox of human existence. The very mechanisms that once guaranteed our survival have become instruments of persistent stress, shaping not only our daily lives but the deeper contours of our health, our relationships, and our inner world. The ancient survival switch, a masterwork of evolution, is stuck in the on position, and the modern human is paying the price. It is a price that is felt in exhaustion, in tension, in fleeting joy, in sleepless nights. Yet, it is also a story of resilience. Because within this tension lies the seed of awareness, and within awareness lies the possibility of reconnection, not to the fast pace of the world, but to the ancient rhythms that once allowed us to live fully, alertly, and at peace. In the quiet spaces that remain, in the small pauses we carve out amidst the noise, we can still hear the whisper of the savannah, the echo of ancient alarms that once kept us alive and now remind us to slow down, to breathe, to remember. And perhaps, if we listen carefully, we can learn to flick the switch off again. Long before skyscrapers pierced the clouds and screens demanded our attention, long before the buzz of traffic or the ping of notifications, our ancestors lived in a world shaped entirely by threat and opportunity. Every day was a negotiation with life itself, a constant dance with forces far greater than human control. A rustle in the grass could mean the difference between a meal and starvation, between life and death. A shadow moving at the edge of vision could be a predator waiting for the slightest misstep. In these moments, the human body evolved a remarkable system, an intricate symphony of signals and responses designed to keep life going. The amygdala, the hypothalamus, the adrenal glands, they worked together in perfect precision, orchestrating a rapid, almost instantaneous response to danger. This was the origin of the fight-or-flight response, the survival switch embedded in our very biology. For the early Homo sapiens, and even for our hominin ancestors stretching back millions of years, threats were immediate, tangible, and unrelenting. A saber-toothed cat lying in wait, a sudden storm sweeping across the plains, the unpredictable movements of other humans, all demanded attention and action. To survive, the body had to react faster than thought, faster than hesitation, faster than fear itself. Muscles coiled like springs. Heart rate surged. Breath shortened. Adrenaline flooded the bloodstream. Every part of the body became a finely tuned instrument of survival. In those moments, there was no time for reflection, no room for hesitation. Reaction was life, stillness was death. And yet, for all its intensity, this system was exquisitely balanced. Threats were acute, finite, and clearly defined. Once the danger passed, the body could relax, returning to a state of equilibrium. Stress was temporary, purposeful, and ultimately restorative. It sharpened senses, strengthened memory, and reinforced learning. It was a teacher of survival, a guardian of life. When a predator slinked away, when a storm ended, when the hunt succeeded, the body exhaled. Muscles loosened. Hormones receded. The mind opened to curiosity, reflection, and wonder. Threats were real, but they were also fleeting, and in that fleetingness, there was life. Over millennia, these survival circuits were honed with relentless precision. Every generation carried the legacy of those who reacted swiftly, who ran, who fought, who survived. Those who failed left no descendants to carry their genes. Evolution sculpted bodies and brains to be exquisitely sensitive to threat. The amygdala became a sentinel, scanning constantly for danger. The hypothalamus became the control center, coordinating the body's urgent response. Hormones surged in orchestrated waves, each calibrated to maximize chances of survival. In the wilderness, the survival switch was a gift. It was the difference between life and death, between the continuation of a lineage and its abrupt end. But the same circuits that ensured survival on the plains are now embedded in our bodies, firing incessantly in a world that bears little resemblance to the one in which they evolved. The threats that once required immediate action have been replaced by abstract, chronic pressures, social judgment, financial insecurity, looming deadlines, the constant stream of information from screens. The human brain cannot distinguish between a growl in the grass and the metaphorical growl of an email marked urgent. Every trigger, no matter how subtle or symbolic, flicks the same switch. The body responds as though life itself depends on it, even when survival is secure and danger only perceived. Consider the psychological and physical effects. Heart rate rises, blood pressure increases, and the body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. These responses were once life-saving bursts of energy, designed to be intense but brief. Now, they linger. Muscles remain tense. Sleep is disrupted. The immune system falters. The mind races endlessly, replaying perceived threats and anticipating new ones. The survival switch, so finely tuned for a world of acute danger, is now stuck in a state of chronic readiness. It is as if the body is trapped in a perpetual state of alert, forever poised to fight or flee, even when the world is not threatening in the least. This dissonance between ancient biology and modern life is not abstract, it is deeply tangible. It shapes our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions. Anxiety, depression, irritability, and fatigue are the modern echoes of a system designed to protect us from lions, not spreadsheets. Every heartbeat, every shiver, every hormonal surge carries the memory of an environment that no longer exists but continues to exert influence. Evolution, in this sense, is both a blessing and a curse. It provided the tools for survival, yet those same tools are now maladaptive in an environment that our bodies were never designed to navigate. And yet, within this tension, there is beauty, and even poetry. The survival circuits of the brain connect us across millennia to our ancestors, to the vast expanse of human history. They remind us that we are creatures of immense resilience, capable of reacting, learning, and surviving in ways few other species can. The same mechanisms that keep us alert also allow us to adapt, to anticipate, to innovate. They are reminders of a lineage that endured famine, predators, and disaster, and they are still with us today, embedded in our very DNA. Understanding this ancient legacy allows for reflection. It invites us to look at modern stress not as personal failure, not as weakness, but as the echo of survival strategies that worked brilliantly for countless generations. Our ancestors did not fail, they survived, thrived, and passed on the very machinery that now misfires in the context of office meetings and digital notifications. Recognizing this allows us to cultivate awareness and, potentially, new ways of living. We can learn to engage with stress differently, to acknowledge it without letting it dominate, to honor the survival switch while teaching it to rest. In this way, the story of stress is a story of human continuity, a thread connecting the present to a deep past where life was immediate, raw, and urgent. It is a story that carries both warning and wisdom. The ancient alarms that once kept us alive are still ringing, and they shape the contours of modern existence in ways that are both profound and invisible. To understand them is to glimpse not only the fragility of our current condition but also the incredible adaptability that has defined the human species for hundreds of thousands of years. Our journey into understanding modern stress, then, begins here, with the recognition that the responses flooding our bodies today are ancient, purposeful, and deeply meaningful. They are the echoes of ancestors who ran, hid, fought, and survived. They are the whispers of a past world etched into our cells, still guiding us in ways we barely perceive, still shaping our lives long after the savanna has disappeared. The human brain is a universe unto itself, a landscape of neural pathways shaped over millions of years, a network designed for survival in a world that demanded instant reaction and unwavering vigilance. At its center lies a small, almond-shaped structure known as the amygdala, a sentinel perched on the edge of consciousness, scanning endlessly for threat and danger. It is a remarkable piece of evolution, firing within milliseconds when the body perceives risk, triggering a cascade of signals that reverberate through every system: heart, lungs, muscles, and mind. The amygdala does not deliberate. It does not negotiate. It reacts. Its mandate is absolute: detect threat, activate survival. Paired with this is the hypothalamus, the control center, the conductor of an orchestra that stretches from the brain into the very bloodstream. When the amygdala senses danger, it signals the hypothalamus, which, in turn, activates the sympathetic nervous system and instructs the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones surge through the body like a lightning storm, sharpening vision, heightening awareness, accelerating the heartbeat, tightening muscles, priming the lungs for rapid oxygen intake. Every nerve ending becomes sensitized, every sense amplified. The world is rendered in high definition, the mind alive with urgency, the body prepared for immediate action. In the context of the savanna or the forest, this system was nothing short of miraculous. The rustle of grass could signal a predator, the subtle shift of light could hint at a falling boulder or an ambush by rival humans. The milliseconds between perception and reaction were often the difference between survival and death. The body's response was calibrated for action, not reflection, for bursts of intense activity followed by recovery, not endless cycles of tension. Evolution had built a machine of precision, one that worked in harmony with the rhythms of life itself. Today, that precision becomes a paradox. The same circuitry that once saved lives now misfires in the context of emails, traffic jams, and social pressures. The amygdala reacts to perceived slights, looming deadlines, or the constant hum of digital notifications as if a lion crouched in the grass. Heart rate climbs. Breathing quickens. Muscles tense. Cortisol pours through the bloodstream. The body is ready to fight or flee, even when there is nothing to fight and nowhere to run. This response, once adaptive, becomes maladaptive, a chronic state that slowly erodes physical health, cognitive clarity, and emotional balance. The physiological effects are subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A tightened jaw, shallow breaths, the creeping sense of restlessness. Over time, the effects accumulate. Cortisol, the stress hormone that once enabled survival, becomes a slow poison, influencing metabolism, blood sugar, and immune function. Chronic adrenaline surges increase blood pressure, strain the heart, and heighten the risk of cardiovascular disease. Sleep, that ancient refuge, is disrupted. The mind becomes a landscape of anxiety, hypervigilance, and scattered attention. Every system designed to respond to short-term threats is now locked in an endless loop, a symphony of tension without resolution. This is where the subtle genius of our evolutionary design becomes tragically apparent. The amygdala and hypothalamus cannot distinguish between actual physical danger and symbolic or abstract threats. The body interprets metaphorical stress, an email marked urgent, a social rejection, financial worry, as it would a predator stalking in the grass. It reacts identically, flooding the system with chemicals designed to mobilize survival instincts. And because the threats of modern life rarely resolve immediately, the body remains in a state of persistent alertness. The tension is chronic, the recovery insufficient, and the switch remains stuck in the on position. The effects ripple beyond the body, reaching into the mind and the very fabric of perception. Chronic stress alters memory, attention, and decision-making. The hippocampus, crucial for learning and recall, can shrink under prolonged cortisol exposure. Fear and anxiety become amplified, moods destabilized. The mind, trained over millennia to detect danger, now interprets everyday events through the lens of threat, even when none exists. Life becomes a series of perceived emergencies, a continuous cycle of vigilance and response, exhausting the very systems meant to sustain it. Yet, despite its dangers in the modern context, the system is a testament to human resilience and adaptability. It allowed our ancestors to survive extreme environments, predators, and competition. It enabled humans to navigate landscapes fraught with peril, to innovate, to create strategies, to learn quickly, to remember patterns essential for survival. The same network that now keeps us anxious and sleep-deprived was once the guardian of life itself. Recognizing its power and understanding its purpose is the first step in reclaiming some measure of control, of rewiring the switch to respond not just to immediate threats, but to a complex modern environment. Understanding this circuitry also reveals the intimate connection between body and mind. Thoughts alone can trigger these ancient responses. Anticipation of stress, worry over future events, or even recollection of past trauma can activate the same neural pathways, sending chemical surges through the body as if danger were real. The brain cannot separate imagination from reality in these moments. This insight illuminates the profound impact of perception on physiology, demonstrating that the ancient survival mechanisms are not only physical but deeply intertwined with cognition, emotion, and subjective experience. It is in this convergence of biology, psychology, and evolution that the true challenge of modern stress emerges. We are creatures wired for survival in a world of immediate, concrete threats, yet we live in an environment dominated by abstract pressures, social complexity, and constant stimulation. The brain continues to behave as if danger is present, while the dangers themselves are diffuse, chronic, and often intangible. The result is a tension that permeates every aspect of life, a quiet but relentless pressure that shapes decisions, moods, and relationships. And yet, within this complexity lies hope. By understanding the neurobiology of stress, by tracing the pathways that connect threat perception to physical reaction, we gain insight into how to intervene, how to create moments of relief, and how to restore balance. We can learn to recognize the triggers, to calm the amygdala, to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, to allow the body to return to equilibrium. The same systems that once ensured survival can, with conscious effort and understanding, be guided to sustain health, creativity, and emotional well-being. The ancient survival switch is powerful, persistent, and relentless. It is a reminder of the long journey of human evolution, of the countless lives that depended on immediate reaction, acute awareness, and physical readiness. It is also a testament to the fragility of modern life, where these mechanisms are constantly misaligned with reality. By exploring the neurobiology of stress, by witnessing the way the body reacts, and by tracing the threads of ancient adaptation into the present, we begin to understand not just how stress shapes us, but how we might learn to live with it, to navigate it, and ultimately, to reclaim the balance that once came so naturally. When we step outside the confines of our modern lives, when we leave behind the constant buzz of devices and the relentless pace of urban spaces, we enter a world that seems to be centuries away, a place where time moves with a different rhythm. Imagine the vast expanse of a savanna, where the air smells of earth and grass, where the horizon stretches unbroken, and the sound of wind through trees is the loudest thing you hear. This was the world where human ancestors evolved, where our survival depended on acute awareness of the present moment, where danger could be just over the horizon, and every step carried the weight of survival. The human body, in its most primal form, was a finely tuned machine, designed to respond to immediate threats in real time, to react without hesitation, and to recover quickly when the danger had passed. But as we built cities, invented technologies, and shaped the world around us, the landscape changed. The open spaces of the savanna, with its vast stretches of earth and sky, gave way to walls, streets, and digital screens. The threats that once came in the form of predators or environmental dangers were replaced by abstract, persistent stressors, the pressure of deadlines, the constant connectivity of smartphones, the pressure to perform, and the noise of a world that never sleeps. The evolutionary mechanisms that once allowed us to thrive in the wild now find themselves out of sync with the world we've created. In the past, when the survival switch was activated, it was for good reason. A predator might be near, a storm could be approaching, or food might be scarce. Stress in those moments was acute, immediate, and necessary. It was a signal to act, to fight, to run, or to hide. And once the threat was over, the body could relax, returning to a state of balance. It wasn't just survival, it was life, cycling between periods of intense alertness and restful recovery. But now, modern life keeps us in a state of constant readiness. The stress response that evolved to deal with physical danger is triggered by something as subtle as an unread email or a text message from a colleague. These are not life-threatening dangers. There's no immediate risk of death, but the body reacts the same way it would if a wild animal were charging toward us. The fight-or-flight system, which was meant to function in short bursts, becomes activated over and over again, keeping us locked in a cycle of tension and anxiety. It's a problem of mismatched expectations. Our biology is designed for an environment of physical threats, but it now operates in a world dominated by invisible, chronic pressures that never seem to end. In the past, when the body's systems were activated, they would be resolved quickly. You either ran, fought, or hid, and once the danger passed, the stress response would subside. But today, the threats are much less tangible. The pressure of deadlines, the anxiety of social interaction, the constant bombardment of information, these are not immediate, life-threatening dangers, but they still trigger the same biological processes. Our bodies don't know the difference between a real predator and an overflowing inbox. This disconnection between what our bodies are prepared for and the world we live in is one of the most significant sources of stress in modern life. The body is built to react to immediate danger, but it struggles to cope with the constant, low-level pressure of modern existence. The once necessary fight-or-flight response is now a chronic condition. We are caught in a loop of heightened alertness, with no outlet for the tension, no clear signal that it's time to relax. The modern environment has changed so quickly, and the human body hasn't had time to adapt. The tools that once ensured survival in the wilderness are now maladaptive in the digital age. We live in a world where the demands of work, social media, and the relentless pace of life make it impossible for the body to fully rest, even when there's no immediate danger. The body remains in a constant state of preparation, even when the world around us is not calling for it. And this constant, low-grade stress wears us down over time. It takes a toll on our physical health, our mental well-being, and our ability to truly relax and rejuvenate. If we imagine the ancient human landscape, we see a world that was less cluttered, less overwhelming. Our ancestors had to deal with physical danger, yes, but their environment was simpler, more direct. They lived in natural rhythms, where the cycle of day and night, the changing of seasons, and the ebb and flow of natural life were the only constants. In contrast, today's world is characterized by constant noise, constant movement, and an unrelenting pressure to stay connected. The demands of modern life have become so pervasive, so all-encompassing, that we rarely have time to step back, to breathe, and to reconnect with the natural world that once anchored us. This dissonance is most evident in the very ways we experience time. In the past, time was marked by tangible events: sunrise, sunset, the seasons, the phases of the moon. There were natural pauses between activities, moments when the body could rest and the mind could reflect. Today, time is something we try to control. It's divided into segments of work, meetings, deadlines, and obligations. The flow of life has become fragmented, and the natural rhythms of rest, recovery, and reflection have been lost in the noise of the modern world. We've lost the capacity to let go fully. Instead, we're constantly plugged in, constantly on, constantly moving forward. It is no wonder that so many people today feel disconnected, exhausted, and overwhelmed. The human body was designed for a different kind of life, one where the pace was slower, the threats more tangible, and the recovery more complete. Modern life, however, has created an environment where the natural cycle of stress and recovery is perpetually disrupted. We are always in a state of tension, always running, always on guard, even when there's no clear danger. It's a paradox of the modern condition. The more advanced our societies become, the more disconnected we become from the rhythms that once kept us balanced, healthy, and at peace. And yet, there is still hope. The very same systems that once ensured our survival can still be a source of strength, if we can learn to adapt them to our current reality. We can reconnect with the natural world, embrace moments of stillness, and learn to allow our bodies the rest and recovery they so desperately need. We can slow down, step back, and find the balance that is so often missing in the noise of modern life. By understanding the past, we can find a way to restore the balance that once allowed our ancestors to live in harmony with the world around them. Every day, we wake to the sound of our alarms, and in that moment, before the mind even has a chance to process, the body begins its ritual. The muscles tighten, the heart beats a little faster, and the mind starts its dance of anticipation. It's not a roar of a predator or the thunder of an incoming storm, but it is something. Something demanding, something pressing. We rise from our beds and enter a world where we are never truly at rest, where our minds and bodies are perpetually engaged in a quiet battle for calm. The environment we've built around us, the spaces we inhabit, have become arenas of invisible stress, constant, subtle, yet persistent. Take the simple act of driving to work, for example. Once, a journey was a chance to disconnect, to reflect, to observe the world in its natural rhythm. But now, the roads are filled with a new kind of urgency, with the blare of horns, the rush of traffic, the constant need to stay alert. Each car on the road is a potential threat to our sense of time, our need for space, our desire to be somewhere without being hurried. The road is a metaphor for the larger pressures of life, a constant flow of tasks, interruptions, and expectations that demand attention. This is the new arena of survival. The stakes are no longer life or death, but they are real, nonetheless. Stress begins before the day even starts, silently and without notice, in the form of competition for space, time, and mental bandwidth. At work, the demands shift but remain constant. Emails arrive, requests pour in, meetings crowd the schedule. The brain switches from task to task, processing information at a rate that would have been unimaginable just a few generations ago. Our ability to multitask is celebrated, but it comes at a cost. It's a subtle form of overload, where the mind is always running, always processing, always reacting. There is little time to rest between demands, and when the workday ends, the mind doesn't truly shut off. It lingers, the unresolved tasks floating in the background, ready to spring to life at the slightest trigger. Even in our downtime, we are not fully free. There are always threads connecting us to the work, to the expectations, to the pressures that have become so ingrained in our daily existence. The modern world, with all its conveniences and innovations, has created an environment that keeps us in a state of perpetual motion, mental, physical, emotional. This constant state of engagement, however, is not natural. Our ancestors did not live in a world where they were constantly stimulated by external pressures. They had moments of calm between the periods of action, time to rest, to recover, to simply exist without the weight of 1,000 demands pressing on them. They had space, physical and mental, to breathe, to reflect, to be still. The fight-or-flight response that served them so well in times of immediate danger was not meant to be a constant companion. It was meant to be a brief, intense burst, followed by recovery. But modern life has twisted this rhythm, making the response continuous, without reprieve. We are constantly running on high alert, even when there is no immediate threat. And yet, it is not just the physical spaces we inhabit that create this tension. It is the psychological space, the way we perceive the world around us, the way we perceive ourselves within it. The constant comparisons, the unrelenting pressure to perform, the social expectations that bombard us from every angle, all create an internal storm that mirrors the external one. Social media, for instance, has become a battlefield of self-worth, a place where we compare our behind-the-scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. The constant need to be seen, to be validated, to be recognized, it's not the way humans were designed to live. Our ancestors lived in close-knit communities, where relationships were direct, immediate, and anchored in shared experiences. There was no algorithm determining how much attention we got, no invisible scorecard ranking our worth. Today, the need for validation, for external recognition, is a pressure that is always present. We carry it with us, wherever we go. This pressure doesn't just come from external forces. It also comes from within. The internal narrative, the constant hum of thoughts about what we should be doing, where we should be going, what we should have accomplished, keeps us locked in a state of tension. We have become so accustomed to living with this low-level stress that it has become part of our identity. We are constantly doing, constantly striving, constantly moving. It is as if the mere act of being still is a challenge. The ancient rhythms of rest, reflection, and relaxation have been replaced by the insatiable drive to achieve, to succeed, to prove. And in this drive, we have lost touch with the simple, human need to just be, to simply exist without the weight of constant expectation. Yet, the mind and body are not designed to operate in a state of perpetual tension. The consequences of this unrelenting stress are profound. The body grows weary, not just from physical exertion, but from the constant strain of being in a state of high alert. The heart works harder than it needs to. The muscles remain tight, never fully relaxing. The mind becomes fragmented, unable to focus on one task for long. Anxiety rises. Fatigue sets in. The very systems that were once designed to help us survive are now slowly eroding our health. The body's capacity for recovery is compromised. The switch that once turned on for brief, life-saving moments is now stuck in the on position, and the result is a quiet erosion of well-being. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about thriving, and in order to thrive, we need to learn to step back, to give ourselves the space that our ancestors once had. We need to reclaim moments of stillness, moments of rest, moments of connection with the world that is not defined by productivity or performance. We need to relearn the ancient rhythms of life, periods of action followed by periods of reflection, moments of stress followed by moments of release. This is not just a matter of slowing down. It is about creating space for the body to recover, for the mind to find peace, and for the heart to rest. Only then can we begin to heal the chronic tension that has become the background noise of modern life. It's a curious thing, how time has become both our greatest ally and our greatest adversary. In the ancient world, time was simple, direct. The sun rose, the sun set. The seasons changed. The body moved in rhythm with these cycles, flowing from one moment to the next with a natural ease. Survival was a matter of fitting into these rhythms, of understanding when to gather, when to rest, when to hunt, when to sleep. The human body, shaped by millennia of evolution, was attuned to this natural flow. It knew when to activate, when to relax, when to push beyond limits, and when to restore. Time was not something we fought against, it was a companion, guiding us through the ebb and flow of life. But in today's world, time has become fragmented. It no longer flows in a smooth, uninterrupted stream. It's chopped into hours, minutes, seconds, constantly subdivided into manageable chunks, each demanding its own attention, each one filled with expectations, deadlines, and obligations. The natural rhythm of the day, once marked by sunrise and sunset, has been replaced by the relentless tick of a clock, by alarms and reminders, by schedules and appointments. We no longer live in harmony with time, we live in opposition to it, racing against the clock, trying to squeeze more into each day than it will allow. We wake early and sleep late, but never truly rest. The body, once designed for natural cycles of activity and rest, now finds itself in a constant state of motion, never given the space to pause, to reflect, to simply exist. This constant race against time creates a unique kind of stress. It's not the acute, life-or-death stress of our ancestors, but it is persistent, insidious, and deeply corrosive. We are always thinking ahead, planning for the future, chasing the next task, the next goal. The mind is in a constant state of preparation, anticipating what comes next without ever fully engaging in the present. And because time is always measured by productivity, by what we accomplish, we are left with a sense of inadequacy, of falling short. No matter how much we achieve, there is always more to do, always another expectation to meet. The more we accumulate, the more time slips through our fingers, and the more we feel like we're losing the battle. This relentless cycle of time has profound effects on the body. The human system was designed to handle bursts of stress, moments of intense action followed by recovery, moments of rest. But when time itself is in constant motion, when the demands never cease, the body is left in a state of constant activation. The stress response is triggered over and over, never allowed to subside. Adrenaline surges, cortisol floods the system, muscles remain tense. The body is ready to run or fight, but there is no outlet for that energy. The result is a slow, cumulative drain on physical health, on emotional well-being, and on mental clarity. Recovery becomes impossible because there is no space for it. Rest is pushed aside in favor of the next task, the next moment, the next deadline. We feel this in every part of our lives, at work, at home, in our relationships. The demands of modern life are ceaseless, and they follow us wherever we go. The pressures of work, the expectations of society, the responsibilities of family, the relentless noise of digital media, they all create a constant pull on our time, on our energy. And yet, there is rarely any room for true rest, for true renewal. The moment we stop to breathe, we feel guilty, as though we're wasting time, as though we're falling behind. This is the paradox: time, which was once a natural cycle, has now become an enemy. It is the backdrop to every task, every decision, every moment, and it is the force that drives us to continually push forward, never stopping, never pausing. But there is a deeper cost to this. As we race against the clock, we lose the ability to be fully present. The present moment, once a place of peace and reflection, becomes just another point on the timeline, another moment to fill, to manage, to control. We lose the ability to simply be, to exist without the weight of expectation. The mind is always on the next thing, always anticipating the future, never rooted in the now. And when we're not present, we're not fully alive. We are walking through life in a fog, disconnected from the richness of the world around us, disconnected from ourselves. We miss the small moments, the quiet beauty of the morning sky, the sound of birds in the distance, the warmth of a loved one's touch. These are the moments that our ancestors would have savored, moments of stillness and connection to the world around them. But in our rush to meet deadlines, to accomplish more, to be constantly productive, we miss them. In this rush, we also miss the opportunity for true recovery. The body needs time to restore, to rest, to repair. The cycle of stress and recovery is essential for health. But when we're constantly on the go, when there is no time for true rest, the body cannot heal. The immune system weakens, the mind becomes foggy, and emotions become erratic. We find ourselves caught in a loop, running from one task to the next, with no real time to step back and regain balance. The body, unable to fully recover, becomes less resilient to stress, less able to cope with the demands of modern life. It is as if we are driving a car without ever stopping for fuel, expecting it to keep running without any attention to maintenance. The irony is that in our desire to master time, we have become its slaves. We've created a system that rewards busyness, that values productivity over presence, that prizes achievement over rest. And in doing so, we have disconnected ourselves from the natural rhythms that once defined our existence. We have forgotten how to pause, how to breathe, how to simply be. Time is no longer our companion, it is our taskmaster. But perhaps, by recognizing this, we can begin to shift the balance. Perhaps we can learn to step out of the rush, to reclaim the stillness, and to restore a sense of peace, not by doing more, but by simply allowing ourselves to be, fully, in the moment. There is a certain irony in the way we view productivity today. In the past, the term was tied to tangible results, to action that directly impacted survival. A successful hunt, a well-built shelter, a fire that could ward off the cold, all of these were measures of productivity, each one vital to the continuation of life. The work was physical, purposeful, and finite. It had a clear end point. Once the task was completed, rest followed, and the body was allowed to recover, to replenish its energy. There was no rush. Time itself was a fluid concept, a reflection of the natural world, not something to be conquered or manipulated. The rhythms of day and night, of work and rest, were balanced and in harmony with the environment. But today, productivity has become an endless pursuit. It has shifted from tangible achievements to abstract goals, often disconnected from any real sense of fulfillment or well-being. We measure success not by the quality of our work, but by the quantity, the speed, and the constant ability to keep moving. The world around us is built on this idea: faster, more efficient, always progressing. We are encouraged to do more, to achieve more, to fill every waking moment with activity. The very act of being busy has become a status symbol, an indicator of success. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, as though the more we accomplish, the more valuable we are. This drive to be constantly productive has profound consequences, not just for our time and energy, but for our sense of self. In the past, productivity was tied to the concrete needs of survival. Today, it is often disconnected from any meaningful purpose. We fill our days with tasks that feel urgent but aren't necessarily important. The endless stream of emails, meetings, and messages can consume us, leaving us with little time to reflect on whether what we're doing actually aligns with our true desires or values. In this endless cycle of doing, we lose sight of being. We forget the importance of moments without purpose, those quiet interludes when we simply exist, when we allow ourselves to rest, to breathe, to reconnect with ourselves and the world around us. Our ancestors knew the importance of rest. They understood that to endure, to thrive, they had to balance their efforts with periods of recuperation. The body, after all, cannot function at peak performance without time to recover. The human system was designed for bursts of effort followed by relaxation, for moments of intensity followed by stillness. It was the balance of action and recovery that ensured long-term survival. Yet, in the modern world, we have lost that balance. The line between work and rest has become blurred. We are always on, always engaged, always striving. Our bodies and minds, once finely tuned for short bursts of intense activity, are now asked to operate continuously, often with no regard for the need for recovery. This drive for constant productivity affects our health in subtle, yet profound ways. When we are always in motion, always striving, the body's stress response is never allowed to fully dissipate. Adrenaline and cortisol, the hormones that prepare us for action, are constantly being produced, even when there is no immediate danger. This chronic activation of the stress response leads to a host of physical and mental health issues. Heart rate and blood pressure remain elevated, muscles stay tense, sleep becomes disturbed, and the immune system becomes weakened. The body, never given the time it needs to rest and repair, begins to break down. What's more, the mind becomes weary. The constant pressure to achieve, to be productive, creates mental fatigue, making it harder to focus, to think clearly, and to make thoughtful decisions. The very systems that were once designed to help us succeed are now eroding our ability to function at our best. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of this constant pursuit of productivity is the toll it takes on our sense of purpose. When every moment is filled with activity, it becomes difficult to distinguish what truly matters from what simply needs to be done. We begin to value tasks based on their urgency rather than their significance. The constant demands of modern life leave little room for reflection, for connection to something deeper. The very act of being becomes secondary to the act of doing. We lose touch with the things that bring us true fulfillment, moments of quiet, moments of creativity, moments of deep connection to others and to the world around us. And yet, despite this, the notion of rest still holds power. We know, on some level, that we need it. The idea of taking a break, of stepping away from the constant grind, is seductive. And yet, in our culture, rest is often seen as a luxury, something to be earned after productivity, not a necessary part of life. We feel guilty when we rest, as though we are not doing enough, as though we are falling behind. This guilt is reinforced by a world that rewards busyness, that celebrates the constant pursuit of more. Rest becomes a taboo, a weakness, something to be avoided rather than embraced. But to reclaim rest is to reclaim a fundamental part of what it means to be human. It is to recognize that we are not machines, designed for ceaseless output. We are beings with limits, beings that need time to recharge, to reconnect with ourselves and the world around us. In doing so, we reconnect with the rhythms of nature, the ebb and flow of energy, the balance between work and rest, between action and reflection. When we allow ourselves to rest, to be still, we create space for creativity, for insight, for true connection. We restore not just our bodies, but our minds and souls. Rest is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the antidote to the chronic stress that permeates our lives, the key to unlocking true productivity, not just in the physical sense, but in the emotional, intellectual, and spiritual sense. By reclaiming rest, by embracing moments of stillness, we can find the balance that has been lost in the relentless pursuit of achievement. In this space of quiet, we rediscover what it means to be human, not just in what we do, but in who we are. In the modern world, we live with an ever-present hum in the background of our lives, a low-frequency buzz of information, noise, and distraction that never seems to fade. Our minds, once free to wander and explore, are now tethered to the constant pull of technology, media, and the endless flow of notifications. The digital age, while offering incredible conveniences and connectivity, has also created a kind of noise that clutters our minds, fragments our attention, and contributes to the constant state of stress that so many of us experience. When we look back at our ancestors, it is striking how different their environment was. The world they inhabited was not one of perpetual stimuli, but one of natural rhythms. The sounds they heard were the calls of animals, the wind through trees, the sound of water. There were no buzzing phones, no flashing screens, no instant demands for attention. Theirs was a world in which attention could be focused on immediate surroundings, on the simple necessities of life, food, shelter, safety. In those moments, the mind was free to fully engage with the present. There was clarity, a sense of presence, a grounded connection to the world. But today, we are constantly bombarded by stimuli. From the moment we wake up, we are greeted by the glow of our smartphones, the ping of messages, the constant stream of information demanding our attention. We check emails, scroll through social media, read the news, and all of it happens in a flash. We are constantly processing, constantly reacting. Our minds are engaged in 100 different directions at once, each demand competing for our focus. The idea of sustained attention, of deep thought, of uninterrupted concentration, has become increasingly rare. This overstimulation has a profound impact on the brain. When we are constantly shifting our focus from one task to another, when we are pulled in multiple directions at once, our cognitive resources are stretched thin. We end up less focused, less productive, and more mentally fatigued. It's the phenomenon of attention residue, the lingering distraction that remains when we switch tasks before completing one. Each time we move from one thing to another, we carry a bit of the previous task with us, making it harder to fully immerse ourselves in what's in front of us. The result is a fragmented, disjointed experience of life, where our minds are never truly present in any one moment. The modern brain, wired for focus and attention in specific ways, is not built to handle this constant fragmentation. When we look back to our evolutionary ancestors, their lives were far less complex in terms of distractions, but they were no less engaged. They had to pay attention to their environment at all times, to the sounds and movements around them, to the subtle shifts in the landscape that could signal danger or opportunity. But their attention was directed outward, toward survival, toward the immediate and tangible. They didn't have to contend with the endless stream of digital distractions that we face today. In contrast, our modern environment constantly draws our attention inward, toward the digital world, the online realm of information and interaction. This shift from outward to inward attention has profound consequences for our mental health. The constant digital engagement can feel like an extension of our minds, a kind of second brain, always with us, always on. But unlike our biological brain, the digital world is not designed for sustained attention or meaningful connection. It is a fast-paced, shallow environment, where attention is divided and fleeting. In the space of a few minutes, we can consume more information than our ancestors would have encountered in a lifetime. But this information is fragmented, disconnected, and often overwhelming. This information overload has become a source of chronic stress. The brain is not equipped to handle the sheer volume of data it is bombarded with daily. It can't process it all meaningfully. Instead, we skim, we scan, we glance, but we don't engage deeply with anything. The result is a kind of cognitive exhaustion, a mental fatigue that is hard to shake. We end up spending more time reacting than reflecting, more time responding than thinking. The deeper, more thoughtful parts of our minds are left untapped, buried beneath the noise of modern life. The brain, for all its incredible complexity, has limits. It can only handle so much stimulation at once. When we overload it, we begin to see the effects: anxiety, irritability, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, difficulty remembering. The body, too, bears the burden of this overstimulation. The constant activation of the stress response, even in the absence of a true threat, takes its toll. Our hearts race, our muscles tense, and our minds become scattered. The body never fully relaxes, never fully resets, and over time, this chronic stress begins to erode our health. This is where the ancient survival mechanisms, once so finely tuned for immediate action and survival, become maladaptive. The same brain that was designed to focus on the present moment, to react to tangible threats, is now overwhelmed by an infinite sea of intangible, abstract stimuli. The constant demand for attention, the constant barrage of information, keeps the brain in a state of alertness. It's as though we are always on the lookout for something, even when there is nothing to be found. The stress response, once designed for bursts of activity and recovery, is now stuck in a loop, perpetuated by the digital noise of our modern environment. We are left in a state of constant hyperactivity, constantly processing, constantly reacting. The result is a sense of fatigue, of mental exhaustion that seems impossible to escape. We become disconnected from the present moment, unable to engage fully with what is in front of us. Our focus becomes fragmented, our attention pulled in 1,000 different directions. And in the midst of this chaos, we miss the things that truly matter: the quiet moments of connection, the stillness of nature, the simplicity of being present. Perhaps it is time, then, to reconsider the way we engage with the digital world. Perhaps we need to carve out moments of silence, of stillness, to allow the mind to reset, to reconnect with the present. We must learn to reclaim our attention, to direct it inward, away from the distractions and toward the deeper parts of ourselves. By doing so, we might rediscover a sense of clarity and focus that has been lost in the noise. Only then can we begin to restore the balance that has been disrupted by the constant hum of modern life. When we think about human connection, we often envision deep conversations, shared experiences, and the quiet, unspoken bond between people who truly understand each other. Yet in today's world, even our most intimate relationships are often filtered through screens. We communicate with a barrage of text messages, emails, and social media posts, each one fragmenting our ability to connect meaningfully with others. The true art of listening, of being present with someone in the same space, has been slowly replaced by the constant ping of notifications and the distraction of digital interactions. Our ancestors, by contrast, lived in a world where social bonds were not just important, they were essential for survival. Their relationships were face-to-face, immediate, and visceral. They depended on one another for physical and emotional support, and the depth of those connections was felt in every interaction. There was no separation between person and person, no barrier of technology that prevented genuine connection. The rhythms of their lives were shaped by shared experiences, working together to hunt, gathering around a fire to tell stories, comforting one another in times of hardship. Their interactions were immediate and intimate, each word, each gesture, carrying a weight of meaning because it was tied to real, physical presence. Today, however, technology has made it possible to be connected to thousands of people simultaneously, but in a way that is often shallow, fragmented, and disconnected. We can send a message, like a post, or share a picture with the world, but how many of us truly connect on a deeper level in these exchanges? The truth is, our digital connections often leave us feeling more isolated than ever. In a world where we are constantly accessible, where we are always on, we paradoxically find ourselves more distant from the people who matter most. The constant ping of our devices, the scrolling through endless updates, creates a noise that fills the spaces between us but doesn't allow for true, deep connection. This shift from physical to digital connection is not just a cultural phenomenon, it has physiological consequences. The human brain is wired for face-to-face interaction. When we communicate with others, our bodies release oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, which promotes feelings of trust and connection. But digital communication, despite its convenience, does not have the same effect. Text messages, emails, and social media interactions lack the subtle cues, tone of voice, body language, the warmth of a smile, that make in-person communication so powerful. We may be sharing information, but we are not truly connecting on an emotional level. The result is a sense of disconnection, even in the midst of constant interaction. This sense of disconnection can be particularly profound when it comes to our closest relationships. We are often so immersed in the digital world that we forget the importance of being truly present with the people we love. How many times have we found ourselves sitting at the dinner table with family, but our minds are elsewhere, lost in our phones? How often do we attend social events only to spend the majority of the time scrolling through social media or checking emails? This chronic distraction undermines the quality of our relationships, creating a gap between us and the people who matter most. The impact of this disconnection is not just emotional, it is also psychological. Studies have shown that the constant presence of digital devices, especially smartphones, can actually increase feelings of loneliness and anxiety. The ability to be constantly plugged in may seem like a benefit, but it has created an environment where we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, measuring our worth by the likes and comments we receive, and chasing after a fleeting sense of validation. In this pursuit of digital affirmation, we lose touch with our true selves and the people who can offer us the most genuine form of connection, those who know us, not as digital avatars, but as the complex, multifaceted beings we are. The comparison trap is especially dangerous in this age of constant digital interaction. With social media, we are constantly exposed to curated images of other people's lives, their successes, their vacations, their relationships. This creates an unrealistic standard that many of us feel pressured to live up to. We measure our worth against a distorted reality, one that is often far removed from the truth. The more we engage in this kind of comparison, the more disconnected we feel from our own lives. We forget that the happiest moments are often the quiet, unshared ones, the ones spent in the company of those we love, without the need for external validation. Moreover, the very way in which we communicate has changed. The immediacy of digital interactions has created a culture where conversations are fragmented and fast-paced. We no longer take the time to reflect on what we say, to truly listen, to process the information before responding. Instead, we react in real time, responding to messages as they come, often without fully considering the implications of what we are saying. This rush to respond, this demand for instant feedback, has diminished the quality of our interactions. Thoughtful reflection, once a hallmark of meaningful conversation, is now a rare commodity. This constant digital engagement also means that we are less able to cultivate the kind of deep, meaningful relationships that are necessary for emotional well-being. Relationships take time, patience, and presence. But in a world where we are constantly distracted, we don't have the opportunity to fully invest in those around us. We are too busy keeping up with the demands of technology to truly show up for the people who matter most. The question we must ask ourselves is this: how do we reclaim our connections in a world that is increasingly defined by distraction? How do we restore the depth and intimacy that once characterized human relationships? Perhaps the answer lies in learning to disconnect. In finding moments of stillness, of silence, of presence. In putting down our devices and truly looking into the eyes of those around us. In making space for real conversation, real connection, and real intimacy. The challenge is not just to find time for these connections, but to remember how to be present with them, to truly listen, to truly engage, and to truly be there for those we love. In doing so, we can begin to restore the balance that has been lost in the digital age. By reconnecting with one another in the way our ancestors once did, through shared experience, through physical presence, through the simple act of being together, we can find the kind of deep, meaningful relationships that nourish our souls and allow us to thrive in a world that often feels overwhelmingly disconnected. There is something profoundly unsettling about the modern experience of time. It moves faster now, it seems, but not in a way that brings freedom or fulfillment. Instead, time feels more like a pressure, an overwhelming weight that presses on our shoulders from all directions. The hours slip away in a blur of meetings, tasks, notifications, and obligations, and before we know it, the day has passed. But when we look back, we realize that we have not truly lived those hours. We've simply moved through them, checked off a list of tasks, responded to demands, and pushed ourselves forward into the next moment, without ever taking the time to pause, reflect, or simply breathe. In contrast, our ancestors lived in a world where time was far less fragmented. The rhythms of their lives were dictated by nature, by the rising and setting of the sun, by the changing seasons, by the tides of the earth. Their tasks, though demanding, were connected to the natural flow of the world. There was no clock ticking in the background, no calendar filled with appointments and deadlines. The pace of life, while not always easy, was anchored in something larger than human-made structures. There was time for rest, time for connection, time for contemplation. Time, in its purest sense, was not a commodity to be used or consumed, but a flow to be experienced, to be lived in harmony with. Today, we are living in a world of time scarcity, a world in which every moment is accounted for, every hour filled with something to do, somewhere to be, something to achieve. We are constantly chasing after the next deadline, the next goal, the next accomplishment. Time becomes a measurement of success, a metric by which we gauge our worth. But in doing so, we lose sight of what makes time meaningful. We forget that time is not just a resource to be spent, it is the fabric of our lives, the medium in which we experience our existence. And when we treat it as something to be controlled, consumed, or filled up, we lose the deeper connection to it. The constant rush to use time efficiently has turned it into something transactional, a series of moments to be optimized, to be filled with productivity. But in doing so, we forget that time is not only about accomplishing tasks. It's also about the quality of those tasks, the richness of our experiences, and the depth of our connections with others. The ancient rhythms of life, work followed by rest, activity followed by stillness, have been replaced by an unrelenting, ever-increasing demand for constant motion. We no longer live in balance with time, we live in opposition to it. This imbalance is not just psychological, it's physiological as well. The body, once attuned to the natural rhythms of work and rest, is now forced to adapt to a world that never stops. The result is chronic stress, fatigue, and a general sense of exhaustion that never fully dissipates. We push ourselves harder and harder, always chasing after the next goal, never allowing ourselves the time to rest and recover. The body's stress response, once meant to help us in moments of danger, is now activated continuously, even when there is no real threat. This chronic state of alertness is exhausting, and over time, it begins to wear down the body. Our immune systems weaken, our sleep becomes disrupted, and our emotional resilience begins to fray. But perhaps the greatest cost of this relentless pace is the loss of our ability to truly be present. Time, when measured only by tasks and productivity, becomes something to be conquered, not something to be lived in. We move through our days without truly engaging with them, without feeling the fullness of each moment. We rush from one thing to the next, from one task to another, without taking the time to pause and reflect on what really matters. The result is a life that, while filled with activity, feels empty, a series of disconnected moments, each one fading into the next, with no time to savor or appreciate any of them. In this race against time, we have lost touch with what it means to truly live. We have forgotten how to be still, how to be present, how to simply exist in the moment without the pressure to do something, to accomplish something, to be productive. We have replaced presence with performance, quiet with noise, reflection with action. In doing so, we have lost the ability to experience life fully, to feel the richness of each moment, to engage deeply with the world around us, and to connect with ourselves in a way that is meaningful. It is a paradox. The more we chase after time, the less we have of it. The more we try to control it, to fill it up, to make the most of it, the less we are able to truly experience it. Time slips through our fingers, and we are left with a sense of emptiness, a longing for something deeper, something more fulfilling. We live in a constant state of anticipation, waiting for the next moment, the next deadline, the next achievement, but in doing so, we miss the moments that truly matter. Perhaps, in reclaiming time, we must also reclaim our relationship with it. We need to rediscover the natural rhythms of life, the balance of activity and rest, of doing and being. We need to learn how to slow down, how to be present in the moment, how to allow time to unfold naturally, without forcing it, without filling it with endless tasks and demands. This is not about being less productive, but about being more present. It's about experiencing life in its fullness, rather than merely checking off boxes. To truly live in harmony with time, we must learn to give ourselves the space to breathe, to reflect, to rest. We must allow ourselves to step back from the constant rush, to slow down and savor the moments that make up our lives. Only then can we begin to reclaim the richness of time, the true experience of living, not just surviving. At the heart of modern life lies an invisible force that drives us forward, shaping our decisions, our behavior, and our very identities. It is the force of ambition, the constant desire to do more, to be more, to achieve more. It is the engine behind the modern world, propelling us toward an ever-elusive future of success, wealth, and recognition. But ambition, while once a key to survival and advancement, has become a double-edged sword. It has taken on a new form in the modern world, one that is no longer rooted in survival or necessity, but in comparison, validation, and an insatiable hunger for accomplishment. For our ancestors, ambition was linked directly to survival. It was a force that pushed them to hunt, to gather, to build shelter, to protect their families. It drove them to adapt to their environment, to improve their skills, and to navigate the challenges of an unforgiving world. Every action, every step taken, had a clear and immediate purpose: to ensure that they and their community survived, to secure resources, to guarantee the continuation of life. There was a sense of urgency, but it was not driven by the pressures of external expectation. It was driven by the basic need to live, to thrive, and to pass on knowledge to the next generation. In the modern world, ambition has been distorted. While the need for survival has largely been replaced by a more abstract, consumer-driven desire for success, the drive to achieve remains ever-present. But now, the measure of success is not just survival or fulfillment, it is external validation, often determined by society, by peers, by social media, by the constant comparison to others. We are taught to measure our worth by what we have, what we do, and how much we can achieve. The more we do, the more we accumulate, the more we appear to succeed. Success becomes a never-ending race, where the finish line is always shifting, always receding just out of reach. This distorted ambition fuels a cycle of stress and anxiety. We become trapped in the pursuit of an idealized version of ourselves, constantly striving to meet expectations that are often unrealistic, unattainable, or, worse, arbitrary. We race toward goals that may not even be our own, goals defined by the standards of a society that values appearance over substance, consumption over reflection, achievement over being. We find ourselves running a race with no clear destination, driven by a hunger for validation that only leaves us feeling empty. The more we achieve, the more we feel compelled to achieve. The pressure to keep pushing forward becomes overwhelming, and the satisfaction that should come with success is replaced by an insatiable desire for more. There is always another milestone to reach, another accomplishment to claim. We are constantly measuring ourselves against others, comparing our success to theirs, and finding ourselves wanting. This is not ambition in its original form, it is ambition distorted by the forces of consumerism, competition, and the constant demand for perfection. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of this modern ambition is its ability to blind us to the deeper purpose of our lives. We become so focused on what we need to achieve, on what we need to prove, that we forget to ask ourselves why we are doing it. What is the ultimate goal? Is it to collect more things, to earn more money, to gain more recognition? Or is it to live a meaningful life, one filled with purpose, connection, and fulfillment? In the pursuit of external success, we risk losing sight of our internal compass, the values and desires that truly matter to us as individuals. The constant pressure to achieve can drown out our inner voice, the one that knows what we truly want, what will bring us happiness, what will give our lives meaning. We may achieve success in the eyes of others, but if it is not aligned with our own values, it will never bring us true satisfaction. This is where the ancient rhythms of ambition, those driven by the need for survival, for security, for community, become a valuable guide. Our ancestors were ambitious not for fame or fortune, but for sustenance, for connection, for a life well lived. They understood that ambition, when rooted in purpose, could be a powerful force for good. But when it becomes detached from meaningful goals, when it is driven by comparison, external expectations, and a desire for validation, it can become toxic, leading to burnout, stress, and a deep sense of emptiness. To regain balance, we must redefine ambition. We must reconnect with the original purpose of striving, not as a means of external validation, but as a means of personal growth, self-expression, and fulfillment. Ambition should be driven by our own internal compass, by the desire to become the best version of ourselves, not the version that society expects or demands. We must learn to ask ourselves, what do we truly want? What are we striving for, and why? Only when we align our ambition with our values, with our true desires, can we find a sense of fulfillment that transcends the empty pursuit of external success. This redefined ambition requires us to slow down, to step back, and to reflect on what truly matters. It asks us to reject the constant rush, to step away from the race, and to redefine success on our own terms. It is a journey of rediscovery, of finding meaning not in what we do, but in who we are and how we live. It is about embracing the fullness of life, its challenges, its joys, its quiet moments, as the true measure of success. Only then can we break free from the cycle of insatiable desire and rediscover the true power of ambition. In the search for meaning, many of us have turned to external sources of validation, seeking answers in possessions, accolades, and the approval of others. We accumulate things, titles, and experiences, hoping that they will fill the emptiness inside. But no matter how much we acquire, the sense of fulfillment often remains elusive. It's as though we're chasing after something that, once obtained, is never enough. The more we have, the more we want, and the cycle continues, never offering the peace or satisfaction we seek. The promise of happiness through external achievements becomes a mirage, a fleeting illusion that we can never quite grasp. When we look back at the lives of our ancestors, we see that their search for meaning was different. They did not chase after possessions or recognition. Their sense of purpose was rooted in survival, in community, and in the natural rhythms of life. The needs they fulfilled were immediate and essential: food, shelter, protection. Their existence was tethered to the earth, to the seasons, to the very cycles of life and death. They understood that meaning was not something to be acquired or achieved, but something to be lived. It was found in the simplicity of being, in the act of survival, in the moments spent with loved ones, in the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. In the modern world, we have lost sight of this simplicity. We have become so focused on what we can achieve, on what we can accumulate, that we have forgotten how to simply be. We define ourselves by our possessions, our careers, our social status. We are told that our worth is measured by what we have, by the recognition we receive, by the achievements we can display. We chase after success, thinking that it will give us the validation and fulfillment we desire. But all too often, the success we achieve leaves us feeling empty, because it is not rooted in meaning, in purpose, or in a deeper connection to life. This pursuit of external validation is not only exhausting, it is ultimately unsatisfying. The more we achieve, the more we find ourselves looking for the next thing, the next milestone, the next recognition. We never seem to be able to sit still with what we have, to enjoy the present moment. Our lives become a series of goals to accomplish, tasks to check off, boxes to tick. There is no room for reflection, no space for appreciation of what is already here. We are so focused on what's ahead that we lose sight of the beauty and significance of the present. The quiet moments of connection, the stillness of the world, the simple joys of life pass us by unnoticed. This is where the wisdom of our ancestors can offer us valuable lessons. They knew that meaning was not something that could be acquired or bought, but something that had to be experienced. For them, purpose was tied to the land, to the people around them, and to the cycles of nature. It was not about what they had, but about what they gave, how they contributed to their community, how they cared for one another, how they navigated the challenges of survival. Their sense of fulfillment came from living in alignment with the rhythms of life, from being present in the moment, from finding satisfaction in the simplest of acts. In modern life, we must reconnect with this sense of purpose, but we must do so in a way that fits the complexities of our world. It is not about abandoning our modern aspirations, but about reorienting them toward deeper meaning. We must redefine success, not as the accumulation of wealth, power, or recognition, but as the ability to live with intention, to engage deeply with the people around us, to be present in our experiences, and to align our actions with our values. This shift requires us to step away from the endless cycle of striving and to ask ourselves what truly matters. To find meaning, we must begin by asking different questions. Rather than asking, "What can I achieve?" we might ask, "What can I give?" Instead of pursuing the next big thing, we might pause and ask, "What can I appreciate in this moment?" Instead of measuring our worth by external standards, we might begin to measure it by the depth of our connections, the authenticity of our experiences, and the quality of our lives. Meaning is not something that can be chased or obtained, it is something that must be created, through our relationships, our actions, and the way we choose to live. At its core, meaning is about alignment, aligning our actions with our values, our goals with our purpose, our lives with our deepest sense of who we are. It is about being present with what we have, rather than always reaching for what we don't. It is about recognizing that fulfillment does not come from what we acquire, but from how we engage with the world and the people around us. In this way, meaning is not found in the external world, it is found within, in our ability to connect, to contribute, and to be present. This return to meaning requires us to let go of the illusion that happiness comes from external sources. It asks us to redefine success and fulfillment, not as things to be obtained, but as ways of being in the world. By shifting our focus from external validation to internal satisfaction, we can reclaim a sense of purpose that is deeper, more lasting, and more authentic. We can rediscover the simple joys of life, the joy of connection, of living in the present moment, of being part of something larger than ourselves. And in doing so, we can find the fulfillment that has so long eluded us, not through achievement, but through the quiet, simple experience of living meaningfully. In a world that constantly demands more from us, there is a quiet rebellion in the act of slowing down. We are often told that the faster we move, the more we can accomplish, the more successful we will become. The pressure to keep up, to do more, to be more, is relentless. But in this pursuit of progress, we have lost something vital: the ability to pause, to reflect, and to simply be. The relentless speed of modern life leaves little room for stillness, for the kind of deep reflection that allows us to reconnect with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. In the past, our ancestors lived at a different pace. Their lives were shaped by the rhythms of nature, the rising and setting of the sun, the changing of the seasons. The flow of time is marked by the cycles of the earth. They moved with intention, focused on the tasks at hand, but also attuned to the world around them. They had time to reflect, to rest, to appreciate the beauty in the small moments. There was no rush to get to the next thing, no pressure to constantly achieve more. Life unfolded at its own pace, and in that pace, there was space for meaning to emerge. In contrast, today's world is defined by speed. We are always in motion, whether physically rushing from one task to another or mentally jumping from thought to thought. We are taught that time is scarce, that every moment must be used efficiently, that productivity is the measure of success. The faster we move, the more we achieve. But the faster we move, the more we lose sight of the things that truly matter. We become disconnected from the present, always looking ahead to the next task, the next goal, the next achievement, never fully experiencing the moment we are in. This constant rush has profound consequences. It leads to a kind of mental exhaustion, a burnout that is felt not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. The more we try to keep up with the pace of modern life, the more we feel disconnected from ourselves. We become so focused on doing that we forget how to be. We fill our days with tasks and obligations, but leave no room for rest, for quiet, for reflection. And in doing so, we drain ourselves of the very energy we need to live fully. We become machines, moving through the motions without ever truly engaging with the world or with each other. The antidote to this frantic pace is not more speed, but stillness. It is the ability to pause, to breathe, to reflect on what is truly important. In a world that constantly urges us to keep moving forward, the act of slowing down is an act of resistance. It is a refusal to be swept along by the current of modern life, a decision to create space for meaning, for connection, for presence. In this stillness, we can reconnect with ourselves, with the world, and with the people we love. It is in these moments of pause that we can reflect on our lives, gain clarity on what matters, and find the peace that eludes us in the rush of everyday existence. Slowing down is not just about physical rest, it is also about mental and emotional rest. It is about creating space for reflection, for deep thought, for the quiet contemplation that allows us to reconnect with our inner selves. In the stillness, we can hear our own thoughts more clearly, free from the constant noise of external demands. We can tune into our own desires, our own needs, and our own sense of purpose. In the silence, we can rediscover who we are, what we value, and what we want from life. It is in these moments of stillness that we can find our way back to ourselves. But slowing down is not easy. It requires us to challenge the norms of a society that prizes speed, efficiency, and productivity above all else. It asks us to resist the pressure to always be doing, to always be moving forward. It calls for a deep shift in perspective, a recognition that our worth is not determined by how much we accomplish, but by how we live, how we engage with the world, and how we relate to others. In slowing down, we are not rejecting ambition or achievement, we are redefining what those things mean. We are choosing to live with intention, to prioritize presence over productivity, connection over accomplishment, meaning over material success. This shift requires courage. It requires the courage to step away from the constant hustle and embrace the quiet moments. It requires the courage to rest, to be still, and to trust that in doing so, we are not falling behind, but actually moving toward a deeper, more meaningful way of living. It requires us to let go of the belief that our worth is tied to our achievements, and instead to embrace the understanding that our worth lies in who we are, in how we show up for ourselves and for others, and in the quality of our experiences, not the quantity. In this stillness, we find the space to reconnect with the things that truly matter, the beauty of the world, the depth of our relationships, the richness of our own inner lives. We find the clarity to see what is important and the wisdom to let go of what no longer serves us. We find the peace that comes from knowing that we are enough, just as we are, and that we do not need to constantly strive to be more, do more, or have more in order to be worthy. In the quiet, we are reminded that the most meaningful moments in life are often the simplest: a conversation with a friend, a walk in nature, a moment of introspection, a shared smile. When we slow down, we give ourselves permission to be fully present in our lives. We stop running toward some future goal, some distant achievement, and instead we engage with the present moment, with all of its richness and depth. In doing so, we discover that the rush we thought we needed to survive was never necessary at all. What we needed all along was to slow down, to breathe, to be still, and in that stillness, to find everything we were searching for. At some point, nearly all of us come to face a profound realization: no matter how much we achieve, how much we accumulate, or how many external markers of success we obtain, something still feels incomplete. This sense of dissatisfaction persists, even in the face of outward accomplishments, and it often leads to a feeling of longing, of searching for something that cannot be easily named. The pursuit of happiness, it turns out, is not a linear path, nor is it a matter of simply acquiring more. The more we chase after the promise of fulfillment, the more elusive it becomes. Our ancestors, however, lived in a world where fulfillment was often found in the simplest of things: a shared meal, the warmth of a fire, the joy of connection with loved ones. Their survival was tied to immediate, tangible needs: food, shelter, protection, and fulfillment arose from living in harmony with the rhythms of life. There was no frantic search for more, no endless striving for a future that always seemed just out of reach. Fulfillment was found in the present moment, in the act of living, rather than in the endless pursuit of something beyond it. In contrast, we find ourselves living in a world where fulfillment seems forever postponed. We are taught to constantly strive for more wealth, more success, more recognition. Our lives are filled with distractions, with external demands that pull us in 100 different directions. We are told that happiness is something that will come once we achieve a certain goal, once we reach the next milestone. But when we finally arrive at that goal, the satisfaction is often fleeting, and we are left with the familiar feeling that something is still missing. We are constantly chasing an idealized version of success, but when we catch it, it never quite lives up to our expectations. This cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction has roots in our relationship with time. We live in a world that demands constant forward movement, where the future is always just ahead, and the present is often an afterthought. We are conditioned to look toward what's next, to focus on the future rather than the present, and this leaves us disconnected from the here and now. The present moment, with all its beauty and depth, slips through our fingers as we race toward a distant future that we are taught will bring fulfillment. But the truth is, fulfillment is never in the future, it is only in the present. It is only in the moments we choose to stop, to reflect, to appreciate. There is, however, a deeper wisdom that can guide us through this longing for fulfillment. It lies in the recognition that fulfillment is not something to be acquired, it is something to be cultivated, moment by moment. True fulfillment arises from the quality of our experiences, not the quantity. It comes from the depth of our connections with others, from the meaning we derive from our work and our relationships, and from our ability to be fully present in our lives. Fulfillment is not found in the external markers of success, but in the internal satisfaction that comes from living authentically, from being true to ourselves and our values. This kind of fulfillment requires us to shift our focus away from the future and toward the present. It asks us to stop searching for happiness in external achievements and to start looking for it within. It asks us to embrace the simple joys of life, the quiet moments, the shared laughter, the stillness of the world around us, and to recognize that these moments are what make life rich and meaningful. Fulfillment is found not in the pursuit of more, but in the appreciation of what is already here. In a world that constantly urges us to do more, to be more, and to achieve more, it is easy to forget that fulfillment is not a destination, it is a way of being. It is the ability to find meaning in the everyday, to experience the richness of life even in the most mundane moments. Fulfillment arises when we learn to live with intention, to be present in each moment, and to appreciate the beauty and complexity of the world around us. It comes when we stop chasing after an idealized future and start embracing the present as it is. But this shift is not easy. We are constantly bombarded by messages that tell us we are not enough as we are, that we must constantly strive for more, that fulfillment is something we must earn. It requires courage to reject these messages, to let go of the idea that happiness comes from external sources, and to embrace the quieter, simpler way of being. It requires us to challenge the cultural narrative that tells us that fulfillment is a product of achievement, and to instead create our own narrative, one that is rooted in the belief that we are enough, just as we are. This journey toward true fulfillment is not about achieving perfection or reaching some distant goal, it is about learning to live in alignment with our values, to engage with the world in an authentic way, and to appreciate the richness of life as it is. Fulfillment is found in the simple act of being present, of being engaged with the people and the world around us, and of living with purpose. It is the quiet joy that comes from knowing that we are living the life we were meant to live, not the one we are told we should be living. In this way, fulfillment is not a destination but a journey that unfolds in each moment, in each interaction, and in each choice we make. It is a journey that requires us to slow down, to reflect, to let go of the constant striving, and to simply be. When we stop searching for fulfillment in the future and begin to look for it in the present, we begin to realize that the life we've been seeking is already here, waiting for us to notice. The human experience is often defined by a search for connection. We long for meaningful relationships, for deep bonds with others that transcend the superficial and the transient. Yet, in a world that increasingly prioritizes individual achievement and personal success, we find ourselves more isolated than ever. The technology that was meant to bring us closer, to connect us across distances, often leaves us feeling more alone. Social media platforms, with their curated images and highlight reels, make us feel as though everyone else is living a richer, fuller life than we are. The constant barrage of images and updates from others feeds a sense of disconnection, as we compare our reality to the seemingly perfect lives we see online. In this age of digital connection, we are more disconnected from one another than ever before. This disconnection is not just social, it is also emotional and existential. As we chase after external markers of success, money, titles, accolades, we begin to lose sight of what truly matters, our relationships with those we love and the deep connections that provide meaning in our lives. In the hustle to make it, to achieve, to become someone important, we often neglect the people who matter most. We are so consumed by the idea of individual success that we forget that true fulfillment comes not from what we have, but from who we are with. Our ancestors, however, lived in a world where survival was a communal effort. They understood the importance of family, of tribe, of connection. Their lives were intertwined, their destinies shared. The challenges they faced, hunting, gathering, building shelter, protecting one another, were not faced alone. They relied on one another for survival, and in doing so, they built strong, lasting bonds. Their sense of identity was not based on individual achievement, but on their role within the group, on the ways they contributed to the greater whole. They found fulfillment in connection, in being a part of something larger than themselves. In today's world, however, we are encouraged to view ourselves as isolated individuals, separate from the communities around us. The emphasis on personal achievement often creates a sense of competition rather than cooperation. We measure our worth by what we have done, not by who we are. Our achievements become the currency with which we buy respect and recognition, and our relationships often become transactional. We strive to make our lives look perfect to the outside world, but in doing so, we fail to nurture the deep, authentic connections that are the true source of meaning and fulfillment. The consequence of this disconnection is not just emotional, it is also psychological and physical. Research has shown that loneliness can have a profound impact on our health, leading to increased levels of stress, depression, and even physical ailments. Social isolation is as dangerous to our well-being as smoking, and yet in a world that prioritizes independence and self-sufficiency, we continue to push people away in pursuit of our own success. We have forgotten that the need for connection is as fundamental as any other human need, and in ignoring it, we put our health, happiness, and survival at risk. What we must rediscover is the importance of community, the kind of community where people come together not just to achieve, but to support, to care for one another, and to share in the joys and struggles of life. This type of connection is not about transactional relationships or superficial bonds, but about deep, meaningful engagement with others. It is about being there for one another, not because it will get us ahead in life, but because it is part of what it means to be human. In our search for individual success, we must not forget the fundamental truth that we are not meant to go through life alone. In many ways, our ancestors had this figured out. Their sense of belonging was rooted in the shared experience of life itself, the challenges, the triumphs, the losses, the joys. They were not concerned with how many followers they had, or how much wealth they had accumulated. They were focused on the people in their lives, on the bonds that were forged through shared experience and mutual care. This sense of connection gave their lives meaning in a way that external accomplishments never could. It provided them with the emotional resilience they needed to face hardship, to overcome challenges, and to survive in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. In contrast, we live in a world where connection is often shallow and fleeting. We measure relationships by the number of likes, shares, and followers, rather than by the depth of our interactions. Our sense of self-worth is tied to how we appear to others, rather than to who we truly are. We have lost touch with the power of real, meaningful connection, the kind that is not based on what we can get from others, but on what we can give. We must ask ourselves, when was the last time we truly connected with someone, without distraction, without agenda, simply for the sake of being present with them? To reconnect with others, we must first reconnect with ourselves. We must learn to value quality over quantity, depth over surface. We must learn to slow down, to listen, to be present with those around us. We must resist the urge to chase after external validation and instead focus on the relationships that matter most. This shift requires us to reframe our understanding of success, not as individual achievement, but as the strength of our connections with others. Success is not about how much we have, but about how deeply we have loved, how authentically we have lived, and how meaningfully we have connected with the world and the people in it. In the end, it is the bonds we form that will endure, not the possessions we accumulate or the accolades we earn. It is the moments of shared laughter, the quiet conversations, the acts of kindness, and the times we stood by one another that will define our lives. True fulfillment comes not from what we achieve, but from who we share our lives with. As we move forward, we must remember this truth: in the search for connection, we find the deepest meaning. In the embrace of community, we find the truest form of success. In the cacophony of modern life, it can be easy to forget that we are deeply connected to the world around us, to the earth itself. The rush of daily activities, the pressures of work, the constant demands of family and society, all too often push us away from the natural rhythms that have sustained life for millennia. We become so absorbed in our own lives, in our own goals and struggles, that we lose sight of the larger picture. We forget that we are part of something much greater than ourselves, a complex web of life that stretches across time and space, binding us to every living being and the planet that sustains us. Our ancestors had an intimate relationship with the natural world. They were attuned to the cycles of the seasons, to the movement of the stars, to the rhythms of the earth beneath their feet. Their survival depended on their ability to live in harmony with nature, to read the signs in the sky, to understand the patterns of animal behavior, and to work with the land rather than against it. They knew that their lives were intricately woven into the fabric of the world around them, and they respected the interconnectedness of all life. Their actions were guided by a deep understanding that every plant, every animal, every rock, every river played a role in the delicate balance of life. Today, however, many of us have lost this connection. We live in a world that is increasingly detached from the natural world. Our lives are dominated by technology, by screens, by the relentless pursuit of progress. We rarely pause to look up at the stars, to feel the earth beneath our feet, to listen to the sounds of the wind in the trees. The natural world has been relegated to the background, as we focus our attention on the things we think matter most: our jobs, our goals, our ambitions, our possessions. We have forgotten how to live in harmony with the world around us, and in doing so, we have lost a vital part of what it means to be human. This disconnection from nature has profound consequences. As we move further away from the earth, we lose touch with the wisdom that comes from being in tune with it. Our ancestors understood that nature was not something to be conquered or exploited, but something to be respected and revered. They knew that the health of the land was directly tied to their own well-being, and that the balance of the natural world was fragile. Every action had consequences, and they understood that living in harmony with nature required mindfulness and respect. In the modern world, however, we often take nature for granted. We exploit the Earth's resources without consideration for the long-term impact on the environment. We consume without thinking, extract without giving back, and assume that the Earth will always provide for us. We have lost sight of the fact that the natural world is not just a resource to be used, but a partner in our survival. The consequences of this disconnection are already becoming clear: climate change, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and environmental degradation are all signs that we have overstepped the delicate balance that once existed between humanity and the earth. To reconnect with the natural world, we must first acknowledge that we are part of it, not separate from it. Our survival is intrinsically linked to the health of the planet. Just as our ancestors understood the importance of living in harmony with nature, we too must rediscover this wisdom. We must learn to live in a way that respects the earth and the other living beings with whom we share it. This means taking responsibility for our actions, making choices that prioritize sustainability and environmental stewardship, and working to repair the damage that has been done. Reconnecting with nature also requires us to slow down. We must take time to be present in the world around us, to appreciate its beauty, its complexity, and its fragility. This means spending time in nature, not just as a recreational activity, but as a way of grounding ourselves, of reconnecting with the rhythms that have shaped life for millions of years. Whether it's a walk in the forest, a swim in the ocean, or simply sitting quietly in a park, these moments of connection with nature can help us rediscover our place in the world and remind us of the larger forces that shape our lives. In doing so, we begin to remember that we are not isolated beings, living in a world of our own making, but part of a much larger system, one that has evolved over millions of years. We are connected to the earth, to the animals, to the plants, and to the very air we breathe. This realization can be humbling, but it can also be profoundly freeing. When we remember our place in the natural world, we can begin to live with greater humility, respect, and gratitude. We can stop seeing ourselves as separate from nature, and start seeing ourselves as an integral part of it. And in doing so, we can begin to heal the wounds we have inflicted on the earth and on ourselves. Reconnecting with nature is not just about environmentalism, it is about reconnecting with our own humanity. It is about rediscovering the deep, instinctual knowledge that our ancestors carried with them, that life is a delicate balance, that we are part of something larger, and that our actions have consequences. It is about remembering that fulfillment does not come from what we own or achieve, but from our relationship with the world around us, and with the people and creatures we share it with. In the end, the key to rediscovering our humanity lies in rediscovering our connection to the earth. The same rhythms that once guided our ancestors can still guide us today. If we learn to listen, to slow down, and to live in harmony with the natural world, we can find a sense of peace and fulfillment that no external achievement can provide. The earth is not just a resource, it is our home, our partner, and our source of life. And in reconnecting with it, we can rediscover the deepest truths about ourselves and our place in the world. There is a profound truth in the notion that we often find what we seek, but not in the ways we expect. The search for purpose, fulfillment, and happiness is one that most of us embark on at some point in our lives. We are taught to look outward, to find meaning in the things we acquire, the achievements we accumulate, or the recognition we receive. Yet, time and time again, we discover that these external sources of validation fail to provide lasting satisfaction. The truth is, the deeper meaning we seek is not something that can be found in the world around us, but something that we must cultivate from within. This shift in perspective is not easy. We are conditioned to believe that happiness lies in the next promotion, the next big purchase, the next milestone. Society reinforces the idea that success is measured by what we have, how much we achieve, and how others perceive us. But the more we chase these external markers of success, the further we drift from the sense of fulfillment we long for. We become trapped in a cycle of endless striving, always looking for something outside ourselves to complete us. The harder we search, the more elusive happiness becomes. It is only when we turn inward, when we begin to look within ourselves, that we start to uncover the deeper truths of our existence. True fulfillment does not come from what we do or have, but from who we are. It is found not in external validation, but in self-acceptance, in the quiet knowledge that we are enough just as we are. This realization does not come easily, nor does it happen overnight. It requires a deep level of introspection, a willingness to confront the parts of ourselves that we have ignored or hidden away. It demands that we let go of the need to prove ourselves to others and begin to listen to our own hearts. The pursuit of self-acceptance is a journey, one that takes time and patience. It is not about reaching a destination, but about embracing the process of becoming. Each step along the way, no matter how small, brings us closer to understanding who we truly are and what we truly value. We begin to realize that the external world, with all its demands and distractions, is not where meaning lies. Meaning comes from within, from living in alignment with our deepest values and desires, from accepting ourselves as we are, flaws and all. This process of self-discovery is not without its challenges. It requires vulnerability, courage, and honesty. We must be willing to face our fears, our insecurities, and our doubts. We must be willing to let go of the need to control every aspect of our lives and trust that we are already enough. It is only when we stop fighting against ourselves, when we stop trying to be something we are not, that we can begin to experience true peace. This is where real happiness lies, not in what we achieve or acquire, but in the acceptance of who we are in this moment. At the heart of this journey lies the understanding that fulfillment is not an end goal, but a way of being. It is not something we achieve, but something we embody. It is found in the way we move through the world, in the choices we make, and in the way we treat ourselves and others. Fulfillment is found in the everyday moments, in the quiet joys, in the simple acts of kindness, and in the deep, authentic connections we build with those around us. The world tells us that fulfillment is something to be earned, something to be won. It tells us that we must work harder, achieve more, and acquire more in order to feel complete. But the truth is that fulfillment is already within us, waiting to be recognized. It does not come from what we do, but from how we are. When we stop looking for it outside of ourselves, we begin to realize that it has been within us all along, patiently waiting for us to acknowledge it. In this sense, the search for meaning is not a quest for something that is missing, but a journey toward remembering what we already know deep inside. It is about returning to a place of inner peace, a place where we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves or strive for more. It is about accepting the imperfection of life, and of ourselves, and finding beauty in the process of living. The more we accept ourselves as we are, the more we open ourselves up to the possibility of true fulfillment. This journey is not about perfection, but about progress. It is not about reaching some idealized version of ourselves, but about embracing the person we are becoming. Every experience, every challenge, every triumph and failure, is a part of the process. As we continue on this journey of self-discovery, we come to understand that the pursuit of fulfillment is not about achieving a fixed goal, but about living authentically, with intention, and with a deep sense of connection to ourselves and to the world around us. As we embrace this truth, we begin to let go of the societal pressures that tell us we are not enough, that we must always do more and be more. We begin to understand that happiness and fulfillment are not found in the next big thing, but in the quiet moments, in the present, and in the acceptance of who we are. The journey toward self-acceptance and fulfillment is a continuous one, but it is one that is worth every step. In the end, we realize that we were never lacking anything, we were simply waiting to recognize the fullness that has always been within us. In the face of modern challenges, it is easy to forget that life has always been a delicate balancing act. For centuries, our ancestors navigated a world filled with danger, uncertainty, and hardship. Yet, despite these challenges, they found ways to survive and even thrive, building civilizations, cultures, and traditions that shaped the course of history. The secret to their resilience lay not in the absence of stress or difficulty, but in their ability to adapt, to find balance, and to make meaning of their experiences. The human capacity to adapt is one of our greatest strengths. Our ancestors faced natural disasters, harsh climates, predators, and disease, yet they found ways to survive. They developed tools, learned to track animals, cultivated crops, and built communities. They understood that survival required flexibility, resourcefulness, and a deep understanding of the world around them. They adapted to their environment, not by trying to control it, but by learning to work with it, to respect its rhythms, and to find harmony with the forces of nature. This adaptability was not just physical. It was mental and emotional as well. Our ancestors had to contend with fear, loss, and the uncertainty of an unpredictable world. Yet, they found ways to cope with these stresses, using rituals, stories, and community bonds to make sense of their experiences. They had a sense of purpose, a belief in something greater than themselves, whether it was their tribe, their ancestors, or the natural forces that governed their world. This sense of meaning helped them to endure hardship and find hope in the darkest of times. In contrast, we live in a world that often feels overwhelming, where stress and uncertainty are constant companions. Our lives are filled with deadlines, expectations, and demands that seem to increase by the day. The pressures of work, family, and society can feel suffocating, leaving us struggling to keep up. We are told to push through, to be resilient, to keep moving forward no matter what. But this constant state of stress takes its toll, affecting our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Part of the problem lies in the disconnect between our modern lives and the natural world. In the past, our ancestors were intimately connected to their environment. They knew the rhythms of the seasons, the behavior of animals, and the signs in the sky that indicated changes in weather. Their lives were shaped by the natural world, and they understood the importance of living in balance with it. They took time to rest, to gather, to reflect, and to renew their energy. They understood that balance was key to survival, and that without it, stress could quickly spiral out of control. Today, we are no longer so closely connected to nature. Our lives are governed by artificial constructs, clocks, schedules, deadlines, that impose a relentless pace on us. We are constantly rushing from one task to the next, with little time for rest or reflection. The constant bombardment of information, social media, and news feeds only adds to the sense of overwhelm. We are encouraged to keep pushing, to do more, to be more, without ever stopping to consider whether this is sustainable, whether we are living in harmony with our true needs. The result is that stress has become a chronic condition for many of us. We are living in a constant state of fight or flight, our bodies flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, even when there is no immediate danger. This state of heightened alertness, designed to protect us in times of true crisis, is now triggered by everyday stressors, a looming deadline, a difficult conversation, a social media post that makes us feel inadequate. This constant state of tension drains our energy, impairs our ability to think clearly, and undermines our health. To break free from this cycle, we must learn to reconnect with the rhythms that sustained our ancestors. We must learn to slow down, to take time to rest, and to listen to our bodies. This does not mean retreating from the demands of modern life, but rather finding ways to integrate moments of stillness and reflection into our daily routines. It means recognizing that constant stress is not a sign of strength, but a sign of imbalance. It means acknowledging that our well-being depends on more than just productivity and achievement. It depends on our ability to rest, to recharge, and to find meaning in the everyday. There is wisdom in the way our ancestors lived, and we can learn from it. They knew that survival was not just about fighting or conquering, it was about balance. It was about understanding that life is a dynamic interplay of light and dark, joy and sorrow, success and failure. They knew that stress was an inevitable part of life, but they also understood that it needed to be managed, tempered by rest and reflection, so that it did not consume them. They understood that resilience did not come from constantly pushing forward, but from knowing when to pause, to rest, and to reconnect with the world around them. In our modern world, we must learn to cultivate this kind of resilience, one that recognizes the importance of balance, of slowing down, and of reconnecting with what truly matters. We must learn to embrace the cycles of life, to honor our need for rest, and to create space for meaning and reflection. In doing so, we can build a resilience that is not based on the constant pursuit of more, but on a deeper understanding of what it means to live in harmony with ourselves and the world around us. Stress will always be a part of life, but it does not have to define us. By learning to live in balance, we can find the strength to face the challenges that come our way, while also honoring our need for rest, for connection, and for renewal. Just as our ancestors did, we can learn to adapt, to find meaning in our experiences, and to live in harmony with the rhythms of the world. It is in this balance that we find the true resilience to thrive in the face of life's uncertainties. As we navigate through life, we often find ourselves caught between two opposing forces, the pull of the past and the promise of the future. Both of these forces shape who we are, but they also have the potential to weigh us down. The past holds the weight of our experiences, our memories, and the lessons we've learned, or failed to learn. It can be a source of strength, a reservoir of wisdom that we draw from when we face challenges. But it can also be a burden, a chain that holds us back, preventing us from fully embracing the present or looking toward the future with hope and possibility. The future, on the other hand, holds endless potential, but it also carries with it the anxiety of the unknown. It is easy to become obsessed with what is coming next, to live in a state of constant anticipation for what might happen, what could be achieved, what we might become. This constant focus on the future can make us feel as though we are always moving towards something, but never fully arriving. We become so caught up in the race for the future that we forget to live in the present, to experience the richness of the now. The challenge, then, is not to abandon the past or the future, but to find a way to balance these two forces in a way that allows us to live fully in the present. The past can offer us valuable lessons, but it should not define us. It should not be a place we go to seek refuge from the difficulties of the present. Similarly, the future is full of potential, but it should not be something that we obsess over to the point of distraction. The key is to honor both the past and the future while grounding ourselves in the present, finding meaning and fulfillment in the here and now. Our ancestors had an intimate relationship with time. Their lives were shaped by the cycles of nature, by the changing seasons, the rising and setting of the sun, the ebb and flow of the tides. They understood the importance of living in harmony with the rhythms of the earth, and this understanding gave them a deep sense of rootedness and stability. They did not rush toward the future, nor did they dwell in the past. They lived with a profound awareness of the present, of the moment they were in, and they built their lives around that awareness. They understood that life was a series of cycles, of beginnings and endings, and that each moment was part of a larger, interconnected whole. In the modern world, however, we have lost touch with these rhythms. We have become disconnected from the natural cycles that once guided our lives, and instead, we live in a world that is driven by artificial constructs of time, deadlines, schedules, appointments, and expectations. These constructs have created a sense of urgency, a feeling that we must always be moving forward, always be achieving, always be preparing for what's next. We have forgotten how to slow down, how to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature, and as a result, we have lost the ability to fully experience the present. To reclaim our connection to the present, we must learn to let go of the need to control everything. We must learn to embrace the ebb and flow of life, to allow things to unfold naturally, rather than forcing them into predetermined outcomes. This requires us to cultivate mindfulness, to become aware of our thoughts, our emotions, and the world around us in each moment. It means learning to pause, to breathe, and to simply be. It means letting go of the constant drive for more, and instead, embracing the richness of what we already have. The past, with all its lessons and memories, is a valuable part of our journey. It shapes us, informs us, and offers us insights into who we are and how we've gotten here. But the past is also a place we cannot live in. We cannot change it, and we cannot carry its weight with us forever. To move forward, we must learn to honor the past without allowing it to dictate our future. We must learn to release the emotional baggage that we have carried for so long, to forgive ourselves and others, and to let go of the regrets and wounds that hold us back. The past, in all its beauty and pain, is not something to be clung to, it is something to be learned from, and then released. The future, too, is a powerful force. It is filled with dreams and aspirations, with hopes and possibilities. But the future is not something we can control, no matter how much we plan, how much we strive, or how much we wish for. The future is shaped by countless factors, many of which are beyond our control. It is important to have goals, to work toward something, but we must not allow the future to consume us. We must not live as though our lives are only meaningful when we reach some distant point in time. The future will unfold in its own time, and in the meantime, we must learn to live fully in the present, to embrace the journey rather than focusing solely on the destination. To live fully in the present, we must practice gratitude. Gratitude for the moment we are in, for the people in our lives, for the experiences we have had, and for the lessons we continue to learn. Gratitude helps us shift our focus away from what we lack, and toward what we already have. It grounds us in the present, reminding us that we are already enough, and that the richness of life is available to us in every moment. Living in the present does not mean abandoning the past or the future. It means integrating both into our lives in a healthy, balanced way. It means honoring the wisdom of the past without allowing it to define us, and dreaming of the future without losing sight of the beauty and meaning of the present. It means recognizing that life is not about achieving some distant goal, but about finding fulfillment and purpose in each step we take, in each breath we breathe, and in each connection we make. In the quiet moments of our lives, when the noise of the world fades away, we often come face to face with an uncomfortable truth: we are not as in control of our lives as we would like to believe. We are constantly striving, planning, and pushing forward, but much of what shapes our existence is beyond our reach. The future remains an unknown, a mystery that eludes our grasp, and the past is a collection of moments that we can never revisit. What remains, in the end, is the present moment, the one we have right now, and it is this moment that holds the key to everything. We live in a world that places immense pressure on us to control our destiny, to shape our lives according to our desires, to achieve success on our terms. We are told that if we work hard enough, if we plan meticulously, if we push through every obstacle, we can create the life we want. Yet, despite all our efforts, life often has a way of unfolding in unexpected ways, leaving us feeling powerless and uncertain. We set goals, we chart our course, and yet the path ahead remains unpredictable, full of twists and turns that we did not foresee. This realization can be disorienting, even frightening. We are taught to believe that control is the key to happiness, that if we can just manage our circumstances, everything will fall into place. But the more we try to control life, the more we realize how little we can truly control. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic, it is easy to fall into a mindset of anxiety, where the unknowns of the future seem insurmountable. We become so consumed with what might happen that we forget to live fully in the present, to embrace the here and now as it is. The irony, however, is that it is in releasing our need for control that we begin to find peace. Control, after all, is an illusion. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we strive, life will always contain elements beyond our ability to dictate. The weather will change, people will surprise us, and circumstances will evolve in ways we could never have predicted. To fight against this unpredictability is to fight against the very nature of life itself. Instead of struggling to control every aspect of our existence, we must learn to let go, to surrender to the flow of life, and to trust that everything is unfolding as it should. This surrender does not mean passivity. It does not mean abandoning our goals or resigning ourselves to fate. It means accepting that, while we can take action, we cannot always control the outcomes. It is about finding the balance between doing what we can to shape our lives and recognizing that we are not the sole architects of our destiny. Life, with all its unpredictability, has a rhythm that we must learn to follow rather than force. Our ancestors understood this in a way that modern life has largely forgotten. They lived in a world where survival was dependent on their ability to adapt to the forces of nature, to cooperate with one another, and to remain flexible in the face of uncertainty. They did not have the luxury of rigid control over their lives. They worked with the seasons, the weather, the land, and each other, understanding that their survival required a deep understanding of the world and an acceptance of the forces that shaped it. They learned to work within the constraints of their environment, rather than trying to control it, and in doing so, they found a sense of balance and harmony. In contrast, we live in a world that constantly pushes us toward more control, more certainty, and more predictability. We are told that success is about having a clear plan, executing it flawlessly, and overcoming every obstacle. The idea that uncertainty might actually be a vital part of life, a necessary ingredient for growth, is rarely acknowledged. We are taught to fear the unknown, to avoid risk, and to seek security above all else. But this fear of the unknown limits our potential and keeps us trapped in a cycle of stress and anxiety. The key to living fully in the present is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to embrace it. It is to recognize that uncertainty is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It is in the unknown that we discover new possibilities, new opportunities, and new ways of thinking. The moments of unpredictability, of chaos, are often the ones that bring the greatest growth, the most profound insights. By letting go of our need to control everything, we open ourselves to the full spectrum of life, the highs and the lows, the victories and the defeats, the moments of clarity and the moments of confusion. It is in this openness to life, in this surrender to the present moment, that we find our true power. Living fully in the present also means accepting that not everything will go according to plan. Our lives will not always unfold the way we expect them to. We will face challenges, setbacks, and failures. But these experiences are not signs of failure, they are part of the journey. The key is not to avoid difficulty, but to face it with grace, with resilience, and with the understanding that it is through adversity that we grow. Each challenge, each unexpected turn, offers us the chance to learn, to adapt, and to become more attuned to the rhythms of life. By letting go of our need to control, we begin to cultivate a deeper sense of trust, not just in life, but in ourselves. We trust that we have the strength to navigate whatever comes our way, and that we will always find a way forward, even when the path is unclear. We trust that the uncertainty of life is not a curse, but a gift that allows us to evolve, to adapt, and to find meaning in the most unexpected of places. As we let go of the need for control and embrace the present moment, we begin to discover the profound peace that comes with surrender. It is not a peace born from certainty, but from acceptance. It is the peace that comes from knowing that, no matter what happens, we are enough. We are capable. We are whole. And, in this moment, we are exactly where we need to be. As we near the end of our exploration into the complexities of stress and survival, it becomes clear that the true key to navigating modern life lies not in fighting against stress, but in understanding it. The challenges we face are not obstacles to be conquered, but realities to be integrated into our lives in a way that allows us to grow and thrive. Just as our ancestors adapted to the natural world around them, so too must we learn to adapt to the unique challenges of the modern age. This adaptation requires a shift in perspective, a recognition that stress, like all forces of nature, is a part of the human experience. It is neither inherently good nor bad, but simply a response to the pressures and demands we face. The key is not to eliminate stress, but to cultivate the resilience needed to navigate it. This resilience is built on a foundation of mindfulness, self-awareness, and the willingness to embrace uncertainty. We are not powerless in the face of stress, rather, we are empowered by our ability to choose how we respond. By embracing the present moment, by finding balance, and by reconnecting with the rhythms of life, we can create a sense of peace even amid chaos. In doing so, we unlock the potential for a life of deeper fulfillment, one that is rooted not in the absence of stress, but in our capacity to live with it, harmoniously and mindfully. Stress may never fully leave us, but in learning to live with it, we learn to live more fully. This, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all.